Hello and welcome back to another episode. In this video I'm gonna review Alien for the Atari 2600 and Alien for the Commodore 64. And let's go! Alien on the Atari 2600 and the Commodore 64 are both based on Ridley Scott's very first Alien movie from 1979. Now, since the Atari 2600 version was released earlier than the Commodore 64 version, I thought we're gonna start with this one, but a little warning, if you haven't seen the movie already yet, I would strongly recommend that you stop this video right now and watch the movie first, because there will be some spoilers in this review. Now, the Atari 2600 version was programmed by a person called Doug Neubauer, and it was published by 20th Century Fox and released in 1982 for the Atari 2600. It is a so-called maze game, and your task is to destroy all the alien eggs in a level in order to progress to the next level until you run out of lives. So in the end, the game has no real goal, it is all about the high score. And if we take a closer look at the game, the first thing that might come to your mind is, oh great, another Pac-Man clone. And you are correct, it is a Pac-Man clone, but it is a good one. Like in Pac-Man, you run through a maze and try to collect all the pellets / destroy all the alien eggs, while avoiding 3 creatures which are chasing after you since they wanna kill you. In Pac-Man, those creatures are ghosts, and in this game they are adult aliens. There are of course some more similarities, like on the left and on the right side of the screen you have so-called hyperwarp passages, which will teleport your character or the aliens to the other side of the screen. Somewhere in the maze you can find an item called Pulsar, which has the same effect like the power pellets in Pac-Man. After you've collected one of them, the aliens will change color and start running away from your character because now you have the power to destroy them. This effect only lasts a few seconds, and each alien that you destroy will be replaced immediately in the room on the bottom of the screen. For each level you get 3 pulsars, but there is always only one present at a time, and its location is always random. Other items will also appear from time to time, like a starship, a rocket or Saturn, which will give you some extra points. The game has 4 difficulty levels, and depending on which one you choose, you either start the game with 2, 3 or 6 lives, and you might have a chance of gaining an extra life by reaching a certain level. Plus, with the difficulty switches on the console you can change the behavior of the aliens, and you can also deactivate the power of the pulsars if you want. So far the game is almost identical to Pac-Man, even though some changes were made, but there are 2 things which you don't have in Pac-Man. A flamethrower and a bonus round after each level. Right from the beginning your character is armed with a flamethrower, which you can use by pushing the fire button on the joystick. But you have only a very short amount of ammunition, according to the manual enough for about a 4-second firing burst. There are no items to refuel the flamethrower, but each time you lose a life or start a new level you get a full flamethrower. Sadly you can't destroy the aliens with it, but most of the times they will run away for a short time if you use it. The flamethrower has also another effect / function which might be helpful in some situations, because if you fight a flamethrower while walking over a pulsar, you don't pick it up and you can save it for later. In the bonus round you have 8 seconds to reach the prize on the top of the screen, without getting touched by any of the aliens. If you succeed you get some extra points and continue to the next level. If the time runs out or one of the aliens catches you, you don't get any points and also continue to the next level, but you don't lose a life. I guess it's obvious that the programmer came up with the idea for this game from the one movie scene where Captain Arthur Dallas tries to drive the alien from the air ducts into an airlock, but it is never mentioned in the game or the manual who your character actually is. Arthur Dallas, Alan Ripley, or anyone else of the Nostromo's crew. Honestly, at first I was a little bit disappointed that you have a flamethrower as a weapon in the game, which doesn't do any harm to the aliens. But then I remembered that the game came out long before the second Alien movie, and in the first movie it was only a logical conclusion from the science officer that since animals are afraid of fire, the alien might be afraid of it too. But we never see if the alien is actually vulnerable to fire or not. So I guess this is the reason why the flamethrower is not as effective in the game as it should be. Now I know the aliens in the game don't look like the alien from the movie, they look more like giant jaws, but if I remember correctly this was the part of the alien which we have seen the most in the movie, so I will not complain about that. And except for the teleportation effect when you use the hyperwarp passage, which I think was very well done, all the graphics, sound effects and controls are okay, and overall, even though I think it's a pretty cool game and I like it, I would say it is still an average Atari 2600 game. And now we come to the second Alien game in this review, and let me tell you, it's going to be a very interesting one. Some people might say that this is an adventure game, others might call it a strategy game. In my personal opinion, I would say it is a real-time survival horror adventure game. The game was developed by a person called Paul Clancy with some help of another person called Paul Gibson and a company called Concept Software. The game was published by another company called Argus Press Software under their Mind Games label, and it was released in 1984 in Europe for the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC and the ZX Spectrum computers. Again, this is the Commodore 64 version, and this is the European version because a little bit later on the game was also released in the US for the Commodore 64, as far as I know, by two different companies. The first one was called Load and Go Software and the other one was called One Step Software. And in the US the game, for the most part they are identical, but some small changes were made, and I'm gonna talk about those later on in this review. Now, why do I think that this game is so interesting? Because of the fact this game is not only based on the first Alien movie, in this game you actually play the first Alien movie. And I know at first it sounds strange, especially if you keep in mind that this game was released in 1984, but I'm gonna explain to you how this is possible. Like in the movie, the game takes place on board the Nostromo. You take control of the crew and your task is to destroy the alien at all costs before it kills the entire crew, or the oxygen level reaches zero, or the Nostromo reaches Earth. Just in case if you haven't seen the movie, there is a brief but detailed summary of the beginning of the movie in the manual, up to the point where Kane gets killed by the alien, which is the starting point of the full game mode. There is also a second game mode called Short Game, which starts right after the movie scene where Ash the android got destroyed. Now when you load the game you get a title screen and afterwards you can choose your game mode. But in the Amstrad and Spectrum version you also can select the difficulty level and you can watch a short introduction, which is really helpful since it explains all the icons that you're gonna see on the map screen and also what the sound effects mean. In the Commodore 64 version you also have those two functions, but you can only watch the introductions if you play the short game mode, and you can only select the difficulty level if you play the full game mode. The three difficulty levels are weak, intermediate and real strength, but it basically determines only how many hit points the alien is going to have, since even on weak the alien is very strong and can kill a crew member with 2 or 3 hits. Okay, first we're gonna take a look at the full game mode. The game screen is divided into 3 sections. There is a map screen, a command monitor and a report monitor. The map screen shows you each of the 3 ship decks, upper deck, middle deck and lower deck, with all the available rooms and doorways, the current position of each crew member if selected, plus a little image of the person on the bottom left side of the screen, and also up or down leading ladders and ventilation grills. If a crew member climbs into the air ducts, it will also show those sections as well. An animation of Jones the ship's cat will run across the screen if one of the crew members comes across him. And if a selected crew member encounters the alien, the screen will show an animation of it as well. The command monitor is basically your control unit in the game. With it you can select a crew member, switch between the 3 ship decks, and you can also go through a list of all the available rooms, showing their location on the Nostromo. You can select any crew member at any time as long as they are alive and as long as they are not in hypersleep. When you select a crew member, you can see their location on the map screen. The command monitor will show you which rooms you currently can go to, then the items that the crew member has. If there are items available, you get the option to pick them up or drop them as well, and on the bottom you can see which special actions you can currently do. Finally, the report monitor is also divided in 4 sections. The first one is an indicator with the letters TOOH, which stands for time out of hypersleep. And at first I thought it was the time until the Nostromo reaches Earth, but in the end it shows the remaining oxygen supply. The game is lost when this counter reaches 0. Each game starts with 7,500 units of oxygen, and each crew member which is not in hypersleep or death consumes a little bit more than 1 unit of oxygen a second. The second section gives you information of the current room, which room it is, the damage status of the room, if the ventilation grill is still in place or not, and if there are items in the room or not. If the damage status reaches 100%, the room can't be accessed anymore and everybody in it dies, plus all the items in this room are lost for this round. Depending on the room, it can also mean game over, since a destroyed engine room might equal to a destroyed Nostromo. The third section gives you information of the current crew member. The name, life status, emotional condition and which other crew member or members are also in the room. The fourth and last section tells you what is currently going on in the game, plus it shows all the messages from Mother, the ship's computer. Like already mentioned, the goal in the game is to destroy the alien, and to do that your crew needs to find weapons or at least tools to have a fighting chance. There are 3 lasers, 3 incinerators, 3 electric prods, 1 net, 2 large spanners, 1 harpoon gun, 4 fire extinguishers, 2 trackers and a cat box available in the game, and all the items are scattered across the Nostromo. Each crew member can carry up to 2 items, but only the first item in the list is the one they have equipped / which they can use. Each item can be used as a weapon, but with some of those there is a catch. The lasers are very powerful weapons, but they only have a couple of shots, and hitting the alien will cause 30% structure damage to the room because of the alien's acid blood. The incinerators are not as powerful as the lasers, but overall they are the best weapons in the game, since hitting the alien with it will not cause it to bleed. The electric prods are also some of the more useful weapons, even though they are not that powerful. The net can be used to catch the cat, and you can also throw it at the alien to decrease its movability. The spanners are very weak weapons, but better than nothing. The harpoon gun is literally the most deadliest weapon in the game. Hitting the alien with it will wound it badly, but at the same time the room suffers a massive structure damage, and the person who fires the gun gets killed in this action. I personally guess that it's because the impact is so powerful that the alien blood is splattering all over the place. The fire extinguishers, trackers and the cat box can be used as weapons too, if necessary, but the trackers will break after the first hit, and the fire extinguishers have only a limited amount of CO2, which lasts for only a couple of blasts, and their main purpose also in the game is to put out fires. Even without any items, a crew member has the option to attack the alien if he or she encounters it, but it's never a good idea and better to run away. The option to attack the alien will come up in the specials action section of the command monitor, as well as some others if they currently are possible, like remove ventilation grill in order to get into the air ducts, enter hypersleep, catch Jones the cat, open or seal an airlock, initiate the auto-destruct system, and launch the shuttle Narcissus. Besides using the items, there are two other ways to get rid of the alien. Number one, if you are able to somehow get the alien into one of the airlocks, you can open it and blast it into space, which sounds simple at first, but it is very hard to pull it off. Number two is a lot easier, just blow up the Nostromo. Sure, it seems a little bit overkill to blow up an entire ship just to kill one alien, but even if no one of the crew survives by escaping with the Narcissus, you still get a slightly better final rating than losing the game. Oh, and by the way, you also save Earth. Because again, when this game was released, the second Alien movie wasn't made yet, so nobody knew about the Alien Queen laying all those eggs. And in the first movie, the original idea was that the normal adult aliens are able to lay those eggs, which you can see in the additional scenes of the movie on the DVD, for instance. And if you lose the game and the alien gets to Earth, mankind will be overrun by the aliens. Now, initiating the auto-destruct sequence can be done in the command center, as long as the command center is still available, / it's not destroyed, and as long as there are no computer malfunctions. Then you have a 5-minute countdown in which you can still deactivate the auto-destruct sequence. After that comes another 5-minute countdown, and then the ship blows up. Those 10 minutes should be enough time for your crew to reach shuttle Narcissus and escape with it. But the shuttle has only room for 3 people, and you can't leave any crew member behind, including Jones. So you can only launch the shuttle as long as there is no crew member in hypersleep, Jones the cat has been caught and is also in the shuttle, there is no computer malfunction, there are only 3 or less crew members alive, and the last one is the most important one, the alien is not in the shuttle. At the end of each game you get a brief report which tells you the outcome of your efforts. What happened to the Nostromo, did the alien win or lose, which one of the crew members have survived, if any, which crew member was the android, and the final rating of your performance. Everybody who saw the movie knows that Ash the science officer was an android and 100% loyal to the Weyland Corporation, who tried everything in his power to get the alien to Earth, while concealing his identity, because the corporation wanted this alien so bad. In the game it is actually the same, but with the difference that you don't know which one of the crew the android is, since every time you play the full game mode, the starting point of the alien, the person being the android, and the first victim of the alien will be randomized, which increases the replayability of the game. Beside the alien, the android is also a threat to your crew. It will follow every of your commands as good as possible, since he or she doesn't want to be revealed, until it sees a chance to stab you in the back and attack other crew members to prevent you from killing the alien. But at least in my experience this doesn't happen very often, and the only one time it actually happened, I didn't notice it at all because I was fighting the alien at the same time, and the person who got attacked by the android killed it in the end. The funny thing was that none of them had any tools or weapons, so maybe if the android is also armed it can really become a serious problem. Now there are 2 ways to identify the android before it strikes, but there is always a catch. Number 1, the android will refuse to go into hypersleep in the cryo vault. The problem though with hypersleep is that if you order someone to go into hypersleep, they stay there for the rest of the game, and you can't wake them up before reaching Earth. So if you use this method and you pick the wrong person, you not just lost a valuable fighter, you also can't use the shuttle anymore to escape, since you can't leave any crew member behind. Number 2, the android will never attack the alien. Sounds at first like a very simple way to identify the android, but in reality it's a lot more complicated, and you really need to pay attention in order to identify the android. Because in a fight you give the order to attack and then you have to wait. If the person was successful, the game lets you know that the alien got hit by this person. If not, the game doesn't tell you anything, and the command to attack will appear again. The game will tell you though who the alien is currently attacking, and of course other things too, like if someone gets hit by the alien or if it flees from a fight, the game tells you also in which room it went. Hitting the alien or actually attacking the alien depends also on a couple of other things, for instance the personality of each crew member. Just a tiny example, Parker and Ripley are both brave, tough and pretty good fighters. Lambert and Brett on the other hand, not so much. Also, their emotional condition plays a huge role, which has also to do with their personality of course, but other factors like claustrophobia, being in a room with a body of a dead crew member, fighting against the alien alone or in a group, and some other stuff will influence their emotional condition and affects their actions as well. And not to mention their life status. So just because someone can't hit the alien doesn't necessarily mean it must be the android. Maybe they are too scared or just unlucky. In the end, I would not focus too much on the android, since the real threat is the alien, and besides killing the crew one by one, it can also do some damage to the Nostromo. For instance, the very first time I played the game, the alien caused a fire in one of the engine rooms, and since I had no idea where the fire extinguishers were, the ship blew up shortly afterwards. And in another game, the alien somehow caused a computer malfunction in the command center. The result was that after I initiated the auto-destruct sequence and got my 3 surviving crew members with Jones on board the shuttle Narcissus, I couldn't launch the shuttle to escape. And by the time I got back to the command center, it was already too late to deactivate the auto-destruct system. And again, boom. But this is really a cool thing about the game, that you never know what is going to happen the next time you play it. In the short game mode you always start with Ripley, Parker and Lambert in the command center. Again, the game starts right after the android got destroyed and most of the items are already in the command center. Now the best tactic in this game mode is to stay together, catch Jones as fast as possible, initiate the auto-destruct sequence and escape with the Narcissus. But it is also possible to kill the alien in this mode with some luck and teamwork. I was actually able to accomplish that, and on top of that I got the best final rating so far, but I'm sure I had really a lot of luck and I actually had no other chance since the alien was blocking my path, so yeah, it was kind of a happy accident. Control wise you can either go through the menus with the keyboard or a joystick, which both works okay. The graphics I would say are average, but overall the game doesn't have that much to offer in terms of graphics. And it's also the same thing sound wise. Now I really like the intro music and the sound effects during the game I think are also alright. But since most of the sound effects are related to the alien, yeah, the more the alien is somewhere close to your crew and the more fights you have, the more sound effects you're going to hear, and vice versa, which can happen that in some cases you don't hear any sound effects at all during the game. So it's kind of strange. But anyways, one thing that I would have appreciated that the programmers had included in the game is to add a little symbol like a cross to every crew member which has already bite the dust, since a lot of times I forgot which crew members are still alive, and especially during fights it can get pretty hectic and you lose precious time if you select the wrong person, which can cause another dead crew member or even a game over. And one other thing that annoyed me from time to time was that sometimes the crew members need forever to go from one room to another room. Especially if you wait for it to happen and don't switch to another person and give them some commands. Except for that, I think it's a pretty cool and interesting game which can also create a good and intense atmosphere. But I also have to say that it kind of feels more like a board game than a computer game, which I actually don't mean in a negative way. But in the end I know that not everybody will enjoy and appreciate this game, so yeah, let's put it like that, the game is not everybody's cup of tea. Finally, a few words about the different versions. As far as I know, the European version was only sold on tape and the US version was only sold on disc. Then in the US version you can't choose any difficulty settings. They removed the time out of hypersleep counter / the oxygen supply counter, so there is no time limit. And for some reason the name of the crew member which dies at the beginning of the full game mode is always unreadable. Now about the Spectrum and Amstrad versions, I never played any of those, but I've watched a little bit of gameplay videos, and graphically and sound wise those versions are slightly different, but not that much. The only thing that I had noticed is that those versions were slightly faster in terms of gameplay, but maybe this was caused by the emulator. So this was all that I can tell you about the other available versions. And now we are almost at the end of my review. The last thing, would I recommend those games? In the case of Alien for the Atari 2600, it is very easy for me to recommend this game to every Alien fan, to every collector, to every fan of the Atari 2600, and also actually to every video gamer who likes Atari 2600 games, because let's be honest, it is a Pac-Man clone. It's a typical, yeah, I would say a typical Atari 2600 game, so it's easy to pick up and play. That's the reason why I would almost recommend it to everybody who likes video games. In the case of the Commodore 64 version, it's a lot difficulter, because it is for me at least, it's a very special game. It's interesting and everything, but it's it has a very steep learning curve, and the graphics and sound wise, it's not that overwhelming. But it's a really cool game, but it's more special. It's definitely not a game for everybody. So I would only recommend it to video game collectors and to mega Alien fans. But I actually don't want to recommend it to any more people, to a typical video game or anything, because I know not too many people will get excited to play this game, let's call it like that. But in the end, we are now at the end of my review of Alien for the Atari 2600 and Alien for the Commodore 64. I really hope you enjoyed the show. Maybe see you next time. Take care. Bye.